without further ado, welcome to the stage, Paul Zak and Francesco Ambrogetti.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love that, you got oxytocin, I get Italian accent. But I was expecting a joke, a neuroscientist, an economist, and a fundraiser walks in a bar and something like that. But no, it's really a pleasure. I come back here after a year. This is completely transformed. It's grown and it's beautiful. I'm not saying because I'm here. It's my favorite conference in the world. So I'm so glad to be here. I work for UNICEF, I'm in New York, and I work on the supporter engagement to get 100 million people around the world supporting children cause with volunteering, giving, and interacting with us, which is a very complex, as you know, in this world, especially when you have multiple crises, emergencies, and a world that doesn't really go the way we want. If you don't have no chance to many more stuff is in my book, both emotion raising and hooked on a feeling. You can find me in more traditional social media handles, as well as on, there is an emotionraising.com, that is my website. I think without being too much controversial, we could clearly say that, at least in this audience, we know that to get people to act, to get people to donate, you have to have an emotional connection. Is that right? We are all pretty convinced. And we know by a gut feeling, we know by practicing, we know by testing, and we know when you have an appeal or a social media post that is a lot of numbers or a boilerplate from the institution, comparing to a nice story of a dog, a cat, and a human, that works much better, right? That get better results. So we know that pretty much intuitively. Point is, we don't know exactly which emotion works better, right? And the point I'm making here is I'm trying to say emotions are for fundraising what molecules are for medicines, because they are never in isolation. You're not going to have something that's all about sadness, or all about fear, or all about happiness. It's a combination. The secrets and the chemistry of a fundraising is putting together the right bond and making works as a molecule. And interesting enough, when we ask this community, what emotion you think drive more donations, that's the answer we have, which is pretty interesting, because most of you think that happiness is the emotion that drives more donation. Now, there's nothing right or wrong here. The point is that happiness doesn't drive people to donate. Happiness is the feeling that you want people leave with after they made donation. But they don't drive people to donate. If you have a bunch of happy people, what's the point for me to donate? So counterintuitively, anger, particularly fear, most likely, as well as sadness, are the ones that really engage us in pay attention and also possibly donate. In fact, if you see the top 10 most successful GoFundMe campaign ever, they're all driven by fear, anger, sadness, most likely. Somewhat even disgust. Most of the COVID appeals respond to a forced sense of disgust and fear to be contaminated. And interesting enough, I also make this example, emotions are not neutral. You got a big campaign that actually been then controversial to build the wall on the border that raised more or less $25 million. And another small organization is called Crises, raised about $25 million to reunite children that were separated from family at the border. Meaning, as you can see, emotions are powerful, they are non-neutral, they are go together in a chemical bond. Therefore, the secret here is to understand better how they work, what works better for your organization, for your appeal. And as Paul will explain even better, is you don't need the emotion just to get the connection, you need emotion also to people pay attention in a crowded space. So this is something that you need the really carefully mastering. So talking about fear and emotions, let's talk for a second about death. See the audience. And that's really a tough topic, right? Nobody want to talk about that, even if we know everybody's dying. And it's very difficult. Lee just done a few sessions here on legacy and bequest. That's the main barrier we had. When we have to say people, well, there are many ways you can contribute to organization. One way is to leave a legacy, right, after you die. And the main barrier, psychologically, people just say, no, thank you, but I don't want to know that I'm going to die. That's not for me, not now. I don't want to think about it. So you get this massive barrier to overcome. And the other thing is that Professor Russell James, that studied from a neuroscience perspective what happened to people when they start thinking about making a decision, he found out that, you know, when people start thinking about making a will, they have this sort of a visualized autobiography. So the area of the brain, they start thinking about yourself and what you will look like after you pass away. So these are two elements to keep in mind. And so when I was in Italy working with UNICEF, Italy is one of the demographically oldest country, together with Japan. They have a massive number of people live longer and get older. There are particularly 340,000 families without children among this demographic, and there are $100 billion that these families will otherwise leave either back to the state, the government, or to nothing. So if they don't know that with this they can also contribute to UNICEF, there's a missed opportunity. So, but we have this barrier. People don't want to talk about that. People don't want to know that they're going to die. So what we're going to do, we thought, okay, let's try to see, I'm going to show you two campaigns, to see which one works better from an emotional point of view. So we have these two spots, and we show them in a lab to 65 plus with kids and without kids, and we measure which one get people more engaged. So I'll show you both, and then I'll show you what the results are. That's the first one.
When you were young, when you were hungry, did anyone feed you? When you were hurt, did anyone make it better? When you wanted to play, did anyone play with you? When you felt tired, did anyone put you to bed? When you were called, did you have a name? Somewhere there's a child who needs our help. When you get the chance, will you help them? By leaving a gift in your will to UNICEF, you can provide clean water, food and medicine, as well as care and support for years to come. Leave a gift in your will and give a child a life.
That's the first one. Second one, this one.
Signora Cotapoia.
Un giorno qualcuno parlerà di te.
এই ছবিটা আমি তোমাদেরকে দেখাবো।
Forse tra i bambini di strada di una grande città. Oppure in uno sperduto villaggio africano. O tra le ragazze orfane del Bangladesh.
আমাদের পড়াশোনাটা যেন ভালোভাবে হয়।
Racconterà perché hai deciso. E loro capiranno. Così, quando su questa terra tu non ci sarai più, per i bambini più poveri e indifesi della terra, tu ci sarai ancora, e ancora, e ancora. Se vuoi fare un lascito all'UNICEF, chiama l'874 5000. Ti invieremo gratuitamente la brochure informativa e sarà l'inizio di una storia bellissima. Ricorda, 874 5000. Chiama ora.
That's the second spot. Which one you think drove more legacy? People just say, yeah, I want to make put UNICEF in my will. Number one? Number two? Okay, it's pretty equal. But interesting enough, as you can see, and here where we get measured, right? So we get measured. People watch both of them, and they watch in a sequence of other movies and commercials. So they're not watching just this. So that we really measure what people feel, like heartbeat and skin conductance, pupil dilation, when they were watching this spot. And you can see the interesting fact that the second one did better, in fact. So did better for two reasons, because there's these three peaks. One, when the spots say, one day somebody will talk about you. So you say, oh, I'm going to be remembered. The second, even more important, is when the voice said, when you will no longer be here. So they start telling you exactly the obstacle. You're going to be dying. But in that moment, the child kissing the photo and passing to the mom is the most sweet spot, and people get very engaged. More important than anything else, when the spots say, call this number, you have the highest peak. That's exactly what you want. So you want the people get that engaged and follow and excited when they say, call this spot. The other spot, as you can say, they start well, but then it's a completely disconnect when they go from the nostalgia part into the, oh, there are other kids in this world, and then they get completely disconnection in terms of engagement, attention, and more important, when the spots say, call this number, there is a complete drop. So that's, you see the power of the emotions measured, say, okay, so the spot A definitely works better. In fact, as you can see, this is the peak, and also works better for the people without kids, which is our target. So we want to target 65 plus without kids. And that works even better for people without kids, the second spot. So when you go to even the data, so what does it mean in terms of data? These are the number of what we call it, people that calling in, just say, yeah, I'm considering doing a legacy. Then they are confirming, and then finally you're going to get the notified that you get the will. It takes about 2 years between you make, I don't want to say, but just scaring you, but it takes about 24 months between you do the will and people die. So in the 2 years, that's that, but you can simply attribute the number of people say, I'll do it, I consider, and then actually do to exactly the spot. So you have a track pretty direct between those that works because of those emotions and those that not. And in fact, if you can see, that's from the beginning. After 2 years, UNICEF now got about $7 million every year that are directly attributable to the spot. So this is an example how emotions are powerful to overcome a major barrier that is talking about that, and also powerful to get the right message to the right audience. Leaving a legacy is a difficult decision, right? But it's very emotional too. People start thinking, what will be people remember about me? And that may be a way, the interesting part, the photo that you see in the spot is a real person that left the legacy to UNICEF. So we brought into the kids, and the kids would say, who is that? And we just start telling the story of this person. So it was really a real connectivity that makes possible to overcome the barrier of the death and also appeal to the fact that you will be remembered one day. And so this is my favorite summary of that, or my favorite painter that just say, what would you like the paint do to an audience? And he said, for me, a painting should astonish, disturb, seduce, and convince. And I think this is exactly what the emotions does, what fundraising does to people, because they have to astonish, you have to surprise. That's why surprise is such a strong emotion. Disturb, you have to create a disconnect where people they feel a bit uncomfortable. You have to seduce them, right? That's why somebody will remember about you. And then finally, you have to convince them about how this is the right choice to make, and then happiness comes because people live happy. So we did nothing more than that. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Francesco. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I want to be of service to you. I have a couple things to share. So this is going to be an excerpt from my book, Immersion, The Science of the Extraordinary and the Source of Happiness, which talks about how we discovered how the brain processes extraordinary experiences. And just like Francesco said, those experiences which are extraordinary bounce us out of our equilibrium where we're kind of doing nothing and provoke us to take action. Great. So what does that mean? How do we actually do that? So I want to go through today and talk a little about the science of how we induce people to take an action, and then give you a 5-step program that you can use to create more persuasive communication, and then give you some examples with data so you can see how, by having data second by second on what the brain values, you can then be a more persuasive influencer for those around you, whether it's fundraising or not, by the way. That cute guy or girl in the hall, your kids, or this applies to all that. Okay, so this is sort of good news and bad news. You already know why it's bad news. Your brain's very lazy, right? So the brain takes about 20% of your calories to run. It has high overhead, so it wants to just cruise most of the time. That's why we see habits. Those habits are very efficient neurologically. We want to do the same thing over and over. So when we're trying to convince someone, we have to bounce them out of that rut of the habits they live in their brain and induce them to do something new. And generally, the brain doesn't want to do that unless the experience is sufficiently valuable. So we measured over 50,000 brains in a variety of experiences to see the neurologic correlates. What are the factors that cause people to bounce out of that rut and actually take an action? So there's a lot of published science behind this, summarized in my book, but you can find it online in lots of places. And part of that answer is that as social species, we are influenced by others. It might be influenced by facts. I can give you a slide with how many children in Africa die of hunger, right? But it's much, you know all this, but it's much more influential. I'll talk about one little child with a big distended stomach who's dying. So it's those social factors, that social component, that drives us to get out of that rut and take an action. So we are open to influence when we have the neurologic bandwidth to actually undertake a new action, right? So we're never going to be 100% accurate because the brain has this unreducible level of randomness. So sometimes we just drive home a different way. Your brain gives you some rationale for that, but you're just doing something differently because you're tired or hungry or it's Friday or who knows. And yet, by identifying what the brain values, our group has published research showing that we can predict things like sales bumps from advertising, hit songs, movie ticket sales with 95 to 98% accuracy because over many, many years and lots of mistakes, we identified that valuation mechanism in the brain, which I've called immersion. So in particular, these systems that bounce us out of the rut and motivate action are deep in the oldest parts of the brain, in the brainstem. They're outside of conscious awareness. So if we could just ask people, hey, what do you think of this? Is this going to be great? Is this going to be persuasive? Do you like this? All the wrong question, because we have this, what I call the Freudian hangover from this whack job drug addict Freud. We think that we just poke you the right way, I can make the unconscious conscious. No, it doesn't work that way. You can't make your liver tell you how much it's enjoying processing your lunch. You can't make the unconscious parts of the brain conscious no matter how hard you try. So we need technology to get into that. And there are a variety of technologies you can use, and I'll tell you a little about what we found by taking these signals from the brain and convolving them in ways that capture the value we get from experience second by second. So what do we measure? Right, so the first thing we found is you've got to be present, right? So conscious attention is kind of a 0-1 variable. Either, what's your name? Margaret? Barbara. Either I'm looking at Barbara or I'm looking at Mark? Or I'm looking at Mark. I can't look at both of them. I mean, maybe if I get far enough back, but I can only really focus on one of the two. So the first thing is you've got to get my attention. That's a gimme, but that just opens the door, right? So attention is associated with a binding of a neurotransmitter called dopamine to the prefrontal cortex. So if you or your kids have ADD, the drugs for that, like Adderall and Ritalin, increase that dopamine binding to the prefrontal cortex. So first get my attention, right? So I can do that lots of ways, right? Look at me, I'm doing something. So you've got to grab attention first. But then, because your brain's this lazy, lazy organ, you have to sustain that attention. And the sustained attention comes from the emotional response you have to this experience. So you've got to convince me, just as Francesco said, to continue to invest in the neurologic processing of this experience sufficiently to move me to take action, right? So if you just get my attention, nothing's going to happen. This is why clicks are very poor predictors of outcomes. And liking, surveys of liking don't predict anything at all. So what we really want to do is get my attention and then get me to care about it emotionally. So that caring, as a couple of people said, are associated with the brain's release of a neurochemical oxytocin. So oxytocin and dopamine have this very interesting dance that induces electrical activity that we can pick up to 1,000 times a second, depending on the kind of machine we're using, but certainly second by second in order to capture that social valuation mechanism. So this is, again, a social valuation. If you guys are gone and I'm drinking my glass of water, this evaluation metric that I've called immersion, not going to increase. It's not social, it's not emotional, unless I'm dying of thirst, I guess. But right? But now I'm interacting with you, I'm having a social experience. You guys are having a social experience. It's exactly why we came here, right? We came here to have that social experience because it heightens the value we get from any experience. So one way to think about immersion, this combination of attention and emotional resonance, is like your favorite little grandmother in your brain poking you. Barbara, 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 do this thing, because you're in a rut, remember? You just want to just cruise, do whatever. So it's a nice sunny day. Hope you guys are wearing sunscreen, have a hat. Remember? Barbara, 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 sunscreen, you're going to burn. We're in San Diego, it's quite sunny here. I'm just teasing you. So, right, so that little thing in your brain that nags you. So same thing with fundraising. We want to have that little nag that goes, oh, maybe I do want to leave a legacy, right? Maybe I should think about not letting my acquired wealth go to the state. Maybe I should use it for something that could improve the world, save some lives, animals are going extinct. So what we want to do is we want to create such a valuable experience in the brain that I induce that little grandmother to keep poking you to do something. Clearly, I'd like you to do it now, but for bigger decisions, like donating wealth, like making a big monetary donation, that is something people have to think about. And if I can plant that seed, then I can potentially move you out of that rut. So as Francesco said, it's emotions that drive that decision. And the emotions capture the value I'm getting from this experience, but they also, highly emotional experiences are saved in the brain in a very particular way that make that little grandmother that's poking you more easily accessible. So if Francesco tells me something who's lovely and wonderful, and it's not very emotional, it just gets in my brain, maybe gets washed out, I don't remember it. But if my darling, nearly adult daughter, Daddy, can you help me? Oh yeah, now I'm paying attention, right? That's really important. That's someone I have a relationship with, someone I really care about. So it's the caring part that's hard to grab onto. And this is actually what it looks like in the brain. So this neurologic state I've called immersion, we can actually capture by looking at how those neurochemicals bind to receptors in the brain. These are radio tag receptors. So we actually know what this looks like neurologically. So let's compare it to what you hear from advertisers. The most interesting and creative advertising. I love this one from David Droga. He's a very famous advertising guy. We win more business not because of pitching better, but because our clients say, we like the work you're doing. What I say to that is, I don't care. I could care less if you like it. I don't care if it's pretty. I care if it motivates action. And I think that's what you should care about too. It's nice to be liked. It's nice that we care about UNICEF. It's nice we care about your charities. It's more important that we use those resources to improve the world. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
I've got to get you to care about this thing sufficiently so that you can actually make an impact on the world. So unfortunately, what we typically do is do this.
Thank you all for coming to our focus group. Today, we're going to show you commercials from the Republican candidates. We'd like your honest opinions.
This punch is too sweet.
Your blouse makes you look fat.
Opinions about the ads.
I live in that place.
Who should America elect in 2008? Former Governor Vincent Aleppo said in the New York Times, I will protect the nation from attack.
He's got my vote.
But in that same issue of the New York Times, they also printed an article about terrorist leader Nusaf al-Mustafi.
Dear God, what have I done?
And ye shall judge them by the company they keep.
Oh my God, they're going steady. Did everyone see that?
So, what do we think?
Well, I thought every part of it was good, but overall I hated it.
I feel exactly the opposite, but the same.
That was the best milkshake ad I've ever seen. Makes me want a milkshake.
That cannot be the state of the art. So over the last 15 years, we've spent millions of dollars of taxpayer money to identify this evaluation mechanism in the brain so that we don't have to rely on people guessing about their unconscious emotional experience. And what we found was that, in fact, there's very little relationship between what people say they like.
Thank you all.
Sorry about that. And, in fact, what moves markets. So we created software so that this technology can come out of the lab that takes data from smartwatches, applies algorithms to infer brain activity in real time by using cloud computing. And we started doing this commercially. You know, I'm so happy in the lab, right? Everything's controlled, everything's perfect. I've done about 10,000 blood draws in the last 20 years to identify these neurochemicals. And then I thought, oh man, maybe I'm just wrong. Right? Maybe we've just been lucky. Maybe the laboratory experiments are so perfect. Before we put this out in the world, let's just test it. So February was coming up. That's when Super Bowl happens. Hey, Super Bowl, that's the pinnacle of advertising, right? And guess what? Every year, USA Today asks people to rate Super Bowl commercials. Awesome. I'll have, you know, thousands of people rate these commercials. I should be able to predict those ratings, right? So we ran an experiment not far from here, up in a couple counties away in Claremont, in which we rented space in a bar. We gave people wearables. We had them watch a Super Bowl. We paid for drinks and food. And every time a commercial came on, we rang a bell so they would pay attention. And then we measured every one of those 85 commercials. This is 2018 Super Bowl data. And the most immersive, this neurologic measure, ad was an ad for a product called Diet Coke Groove. This is a flavored Diet Coke. And yet, it was one of the least liked commercials. In fact, we find a zero correlation between what people said they liked on USA Today and this neurologic measure immersion. So then you go home, you go, well, obviously I suck at my job. I should be doing something different because I don't know what I'm doing. And then you wake up 3 in the morning, or I woke up 3 in the morning, and we're like, wait, maybe those are insane people. Maybe there's too much noise in the bar. Maybe people drank too much. Let's just rerun that experiment. So everything's online, right? Went to YouTube. We got all the 2017 Super Bowl commercials, reran it. We same the same zero correlation between what people say they like and metrics of success. So I don't have sales bumps for this, although we do have sales bump data, but we have metrics that are related to sales bump. We have things like YouTube views and YouTube comments. I'll show you that data in a second. Let me show you this commercial with the neurologic data across about 60 people running below it, so you can see second by second why this is an immersive commercial.
Diet Coke Twisted Mango, because oh, that's why. Can't help it. Hey, still going. Maybe slowing it down. Maybe it's getting sexier. I don't know. Mango does.
Okay, so what in the heck is that commercial? Can we agree? Not likable. With this giant giraffe woman moving in a weird way, the socks. I mean, so yeah, you don't like that. But you put a puppy in a commercial. Oh, everyone loves the puppy commercial. Again, not the question I'm asking. I don't care if you like it. I care if it moves markets. So Diet Coke sales have been flat for 2 years. When this came out, now they released new products. It wasn't just the advertising. They had their first quarterly increase with these Super Bowl commercials. And then more generally across all those commercials, when I look at the USA Today measure of liking, there's a negative correlation with our proxy for sales bump, YouTube views, YouTube comments, certainly a measure of buzz, and a positive relationship with whatever this neurologic measure is, immersion. So at least on a first cut, we're going the right direction. And now, 15 years in, again, we've shown in published research our ability to predict a whole variety of factors that have this social emotional content. So let me kind of go through and give you, if you will, a couple examples of how this looks, and then give you an algorithm you can use. So here's one of the blood draw experiments. This was a commercial we did in Denmark. And watch it, and you can just see what these experiments look like.
Det siger mig ikke noget. Valentinsdag.
Jeg springer over den. Altså, den er mig fløjtende ligegyldig.
Det er jo lidt
bare en amerikansk højtid.
Men kan du huske, hvornår du sidst har gjort noget rart for hende?
Nej, det kan jeg faktisk ikke. Ikke sådan lige på stående fod.
Var det et godt spørgsmål?
I'm very excited about this. This experiment has never been done before. Hi. Come on in. Dr. Zak, we're going to take a little blood from your arm. We'll take 2 blood samples from our subjects, one before and one after. We'll measure the change in oxytocin to see if people actually became happier. Oxytocin is sometimes called the love molecule. Oxytocin makes us happier, increases erections, and produces more powerful orgasms. This is really powerful stuff.
Jeg skulle fortælle dig, hvorfor jeg elsker dig. Så det må jeg jo gøre.
Jeg elsker dig, fordi du er så speciel. Du bare er den, du er.
Du tænker på andre mennesker end dig selv.
Dine empatiske evner overstiger alt andet, jeg nogensinde har set.
Du har taget mig i dine arme, siden vi mødtes.
Du gør mig i godt humør. Du er dejlig. Du er min makker, du er min partner.
The most remarkable thing is the more we give, the more oxytocin we produce.
Det påvirker mig. Jeg bliver da selv faktisk et gladere menneske.
So if you claim not to like Valentine's Day, the blood proves that it'll make you happier. If you still don't like it, fair enough. Do it some other day. So Impact. So there's a very famous director in Denmark that filmed that. And I always say if I'm going to be in a commercial, like, I can't memorize lines, I'm not an actor, I don't know how to be emotional on camera, unless you can fund an experiment for me, and then I can actually talk about it with some energy. This is really done. Nice thing now is that we don't need to do blood draws. We've actually created technologies so that we can now capture these data lots of different ways, but in particular by applying algorithms to smartwatch data. So what have we learned so far? You got a lazy brain. I've got to get you to pay attention and care about the context that I'm creating for you. And we'll see that story is going to be a key part of this. So let me give you a 5-step algorithm that you can use when you are communicating written, orally, with videos. I can't remember anything, so I always make acronyms. This acronym for this is CERTA, like being certain that you can influence other people. I discovered, Francesco, that this is a tiny Italy in the Italian Alps.
That's true.
CERTA. So I have to go there at some point and make a pilgrimage to CERTA. So that's the picture of that. So 5 steps: staging, immersion, relevance, target, and action. Let me go through those in a little bit of detail. So first is staging. So I said earlier that I've got to create space so that you're able to process this information. Being immersed in a communication, in an experience, is metabolically costly. If you are tired, hungry, distracted, it's not going to be a great experience for you. So sometimes we want to be so efficient, particularly Americans. We want to be so efficient with your time. So Mark, hey Mark, how you doing? Good, great to see you. Slow it down, right? Set the stage first, right? Think about creating space for that experience. So make that particular person you're trying to influence comfortable. Have them sit down, have them get a cup of coffee or drink of water. So think of what we do in a movie theater, right? We have previews, people with noise or on their phone, then they have the lights come down, right? We have this sense of silence, we have this sense of darkness, right? We want to create that experience, the space for that experience so it can be highly immersive. So we call this psychological safety. That's the feeling of comfort I have around other people. So again, social influence, that's what we're talking about here. It's all going to be social. But if these people are driving me nuts, if they, I don't know, are just too hyper or too aggressive or they're moving too fast, it's not going to be a great experience and you're less likely to be able to influence them. Okay, the second is you have to immerse them in the story. We've talked a lot about this. We have found in the data that you've got 15 seconds to capture their attention. If you cannot get their attention in 15 seconds, then generally their attention is going to wander and you're not going to be able to get them in the next version, the next portion of that, which is to get this experience to emotionally resonate with them. Right? Think about, every James Bond movie you've ever seen. Right? What happens? Something crazy. He's running across the rooftop and bullets are flying at his feet and there's a damsel in distress and he has to save her and he jumps off the building and you're like, holy crap, what's going on here? I got to see what happens in this movie. I got to see what happened. So in Hollywood, they call this opening hot. First you set the stage, open hot, right? Then you have that short window, get me to care about what's going on, and then you can backfill with the story around this. So we have found, relative to the focus of this conference, the most effective way to immerse people in an experience is through using a narrative arc. Storytelling works, full stop. So what do I mean by that? Open hot, and then develop characters, put them in a situation, have a mystery, have a crisis, have authentic emotions, allow those emotions to show and have that story resolve in a way that reflects the action that people want to take. This is very much monkey see, monkey do, right? So I show you a video about why men in Denmark don't like Valentine's Day because it's an American holiday. Maybe I can change your mind. Maybe I can tell a really good story. It's a beautiful story. By the way, that video got 100 million views the first month it was released, and it won an award for like the top video or top advertisement in Denmark. Again, not because I'm so wonderful, because it was a freaking good idea. By the way, that was 5 days in the dark in December. I never saw the sun. Like Copenhagen's so cold in the winter time. And like we just ground through all those people, like 2 blood draws, process all that blood. It was a ton of work. So we really ran that experiment. But again, it was beautifully filmed. I thought it was a great idea. Okay, so get me to care about it. Have authentic individuals at human scale, right? Stories are human scale. It's not a graph. It's not, how many people this thing's happening to. It's that human scale story that we can really understand. Next is that story's got to be relevant, right? So if I'm talking to my new friend Mark and I'm talking about, you have kids? No. Okay, no kids. So I'm trying to sell him diapers. I can show you the cutest commercial for Huggies diapers, those babies with big eyes, oh, they're so cute. And his brain will wash, he'll be happy for 30 seconds and your brain will wash it out. Diapers are not relevant, right? My kids are older, I'll watch that commercial, my brain's gonna wash it out. It'll flush it out because they're diapers. Okay, so it's gonna flush out that information because it's not relevant to me. Barbara's got little babies at home. I don't know if this is true. She has little babies, and so I do the Huggies commercial. I say, by the way, Huggies, 20% off. Oh, that's super relevant to her. So there's not one best story that's going to resonate for everybody. There are stories that are more relevant for different target audiences. So you might have a story structure and then specialize it in order to most effectively influence that individual. By the way, this is influence, this is not coercion, right? You have freedom of choice, right? I can't force Mark to buy Huggies diapers. He doesn't care about them, right? There's no ethical problem here. If we want to communicate, we want to do it effectively and learn how to do it properly, but people always can say no, right? There's no brainwashing here. There's no secret formula. Okay. Next up is really identifying who loves the story the most. I call this targeting. An example is this movie, Fault in Our Stars. This was originally a young adult novel, mostly read by teenage girls. And they had a movie come out, they made of this. The stars were unknown actors. It's about 2 kids who have cancer. They meet in a support group. And this movie cost $30 million to make, made over $120 million worldwide. Huge, huge hit. Why? Because they promoted this movie in such an effective way. Bring your friends. And so you see these gaggles of girls and the boys that want to be with them, they would go see the movie in groups. So I just sold 7 tickets, and they would do it 3 or 4 or 5 times. Once they burnt that out, then they started doing promotions. They said, hey, actually this is before the movie came out, whatever state in the US posts the most on social media about the movie, we're going to fly the stars in. You can hang out with them for a day. Holy crap, everyone's now posting on social media. Brilliant, because you already have a constituency. They already love it. You've targeted them. And then lastly, as the movie was out, they did a real interesting promotion, which was, okay, groups of girls are seeing this movie. Awesome. how do we add value once they've seen it 3 times? So you can pay, instead of $15 to the movie, you can pay $25, and after the movie, stay in the theater, and they're gonna zoom in the actors, and you can ask them questions about how they made the movie and how they feel. And so now you have these groups of girls paying $25 to see the movie and ask more questions. Brilliant, brilliant marketing, right? So they knew their target audience, and so they really crafted that experience so it was great for them. Okay, and lastly, as Francesco said, you've got to do that call to action, right? So when you've immersed someone, you have convinced them that this experience is really valuable to them. You've got to make the ask, right? We're always a little shy to do that. Well, would you like to? No, you've got them. You've captured them. And right, that immersion, that lazy brain's going to go back in its rut. You've got them out of the rut. They're excited. This is interesting. Hey, would you like to do this right now? Right? You've got to ask for the sale. You've got to try to close that deal. Right? You create a great experience for them. Again, they can say no. You're not pressuring them. They can change their mind, but really ask them, can you sign here? How about, would you like to do this? Right? And make that ask bigger rather than smaller. Right? You've done all this work now. Right? You've tested all this content. Right? I don't want to ask you for $10. I want to ask you for $500. Yeah, it's a big ask for a lot of people. But this is why it's important. We just showed you for the communication we created. I need you to write a check for $500. Can you do that? Yeah, it's hard. It's scary. But what are you going to do? So here's the formula. Create the stage. Immerse them in the experience using a story. Make sure that story is relevant. Identify your super fans. They're their targets. They're going to spread this word for you. Their word of mouth. Their leverage. Find who the super fans are. Ask them to help you. They want to do it. And then ask them to create an action. So they lock this experience in. Okay, let me give you a couple examples. 7, 8 years ago, there was an article in Fast Company magazine called The Rise of Sadvertising. So the only way I convince you to take an action with a story is if you're crying. Really? Maybe. We're just got some data on that. Let's see. So we wanted to test that thesis. So this was an experiment in which we actually manipulated synthetic oxytocin. We shot it up at people's brains through their noses or placebo and had them watch a whole variety of public service announcements from Europe because Americans would not have seen it. Every ad they watched, they earned $5. At the end, they could donate to a charity associated with that ad or not. So let me play just a couple of these for you. What we found, let me play it for you. I'll tell you what we found in a second.
Don't be every other. Test your heart at everyother.fi.
This is hard. You people are terrible. You're laughing at people dying? Come on, what kind of people are you? Right, so this is really an interesting ad, right? This is not sad, it's funny. How do we know it's funny? First of all, we have a human scale story. We've all been on rides. We see people are not getting supports. Now we're intrigued as humans, as social creatures, like what the hell's going on with these people? Then they fly off. You're a bad person because you laughed. And they fly. But now we have the teenagers who fill in for the audience. They go, oh, it's just a joke. They pretend no one really got killed here, right? And then we're making a point. Hey, people do die, but they die of heart disease. So after this ad, Americans who saw this could donate to the American Heart Association. We found that people given synthetic oxytocin donated to 50% more of the ads, and they donated 56% more money than those on placebo. They cared more about the characters in the ad. These are fake characters. They still say, oh gosh, it's really important, right? Heart disease, oh my God, half of the Finland people are getting it. This is terrible. So again, you've really got to grab that emotional part. So as I said earlier, the attention just opens the door. It's the emotion that locks in the decision. So I've got to tell this emotional story, and it can be funny. It's okay. Okay, here's another one. This is for work we did with Travelers Life Insurance. So the difficulty with life insurance, like a lot of charities, is that it's a poorly differentiated product, If I'm going to donate to your charity, I could donate to UNICEF, I could donate to lots of different things. Why should I donate to you? Same with life insurance. If you have life insurance, you pretty much keep it. You stop looking at it. Hopefully you never need to use it. So they don't want to say, hey, by the way, you're going to die. You should buy life insurance. So they're going to tell a story, and this story was really effective. These are some new ads that they had launched just a couple years ago, and their metric of success was YouTube views, which is kind of a dirty metric. Let's watch it, and you'll see the immersion data second by second. I'm going to isolate here the attentional component and the emotional component. You'll see that most of the variation second by second immersion is due to emotion.
This is the home you're going to grow up in. Like it?
In this small house made of brick and stone, built on laughter and all our dreams and hopes. In this small house together we have grown, made a family, made us all a home. Small house, bursting at the seams with our history and sweet memories.
You make it a home, we help you protect it. Travelers, it's better under the umbrella.
Okay, I'm going to just pull that back so you can see the data. So this commercial does a couple really smart things. So there's a pattern. Right? We get the issue, right? Your little kid's bigger, it's going to grow up, and God forbid something happens to you, and you still want your daughter to have a wedding. Gosh, you might think about getting life insurance. So the house gets older, the trees get bigger, the people get older. But the pattern is, little girl gets hurt, dad wipes away the tear. Little girl gets hurt, dad wipes away the tear. And now we increase the emotion when girls going off to college, right? Big hug from dad, big tears. We see the immersion line go up. So the red line is the immersion. The green is the emotional component, and the blue is the attentional component. So that blue line is, other than that spike when something happens, if the video starts, went from a blank screen to the video, the blue line's basically just a flat line, right, roughly. So it's the emotional component that drives that immersive state. Okay, so now we have this increase in immersion when now the emotion's getting higher. We get a close-up on the faces, right? Before the little girl was more distant. Now we have this close-up, we see all that emotion. Then they do this beautiful cut of dad saying goodbye to daughter going to college to dad giving away the bride, or I guess saying goodbye to his daughter after she's married. And now the father cries and the daughter wipes away the tear. Beautiful editing. So what travelers found was for all the commercials they had tested, a 0.80 correlation between immersion and YouTube views a month after release. That's almost a perfectly predictive measure. Right? So it allows them to go, oh, this thing's working. The other commercials, okay, this thing's killing it. Let's just replicate. Let's extend. Let's use this theme over and over. And in particular, you see this nice peak in immersion when the branding moment comes up. Right? There's no explicit call to action, but there's an implicit call to action, which is, hey, we're awesome. We tell great stories. And if you're thinking about life insurance, traveler. So I want to have that immersion peak when I want to close the sale, if you will. I want to ask for that. Okay, we're almost out of time. I want to leave time for questions. I'm not going to play these because we sent around a bunch of videos, Francesco did, with our free app called Tuesday that asks you all to watch some videos on the phone, fundraising videos, and assess neurologically if they were going to be effective or not. So one was for Amnesty International. It was a really beautiful ad on hypnosis. It was a 47 out of 100, so immersion is normalized around 0 to 100. It's linear, higher is better. That flat line means it didn't peak or have a trough. It was just kind of flat throughout. So it's a 5-minute video. It's too long. It's really, really wonderful. It's a video of people who have been refugees, and they ask people about refugees, and they hypnotize some of these people, and they have them go through the experience of being a refugee, being in a war zone, and then they meet some real refugees. And people cry at the end. It's beautiful, but it's too long. We got it. So what we see often in fundraising is that we have plenty of time. We're putting this on YouTube. You know, time is free, but neurologically, time is not free. Remember that lazy, lazy brain? I want to get back to my baseline, that rut I'm in. And so shorter, almost always better. So just too long. So 47 out of 100 is not bad. Baseline for short form advertising like this is around 55 for immersion. So a little below baseline. This is a wonderful video by who? Mama Hope video. So it's about African men in the UK, and they all seem like young guys and cool, and they're playing soccer, and then you find out one's an engineer, one's in medical school, and so it changes your perception of refugees in this case. 50 out of 100, pretty good. Worked well, again, fairly flat, didn't have a nice peak at the end for the call to action, although very implicit. And the last one's for Concordia College, about a woman who, African-American woman who was told in high school that she shouldn't go to college because she should just get a trade. But in fact, she goes to Concordia College because her pastor tells her, hey, you've got something special. You should try to get educated. And she goes and becomes a teacher, and her life changes. And that was actually quite good, 58. The woman is so genuine. I think this probably was, I can't believe it was an actor. I think this was really a woman who went through this experience, and I think she's crying like, my whole life changed because one person believed in me at Concordia College, gave me an opportunity to do this. So very quickly, in the remaining 2 minutes, we'll take some questions. What we've also found in published research is that when I have a social purpose, like all the work you all do, the immersion is always higher, right? So we looked at, for example, Kiva investments and African entrepreneurs. When it's self-focused, hey, I want to help my family live better, so I need an investment to increase my fruit stand. Or I want to have an investment to increase my fruit stand because women in my village get married at 11 or 12 years old to old men, and I want to give them jobs. They don't have to get married to these old, gross people. And like they get way more donations. So really, make that social purpose important. So here's the punchline. You can be certain to influence people if you use staging, establish psychological safety, create a narrative with high immersion, have authentic emotions, capture people's attention, open hot, and then give them something to do. Make sure that the story is relevant for the audience you created it for. Find your superfans, target them, ask them to help you, and then have that call to action at an immersion peak. You can try the free app. I think you've got this in email, but you could try it for free. Actually, use it for free as long as you want. It's called Tuesday. It's in the App Store. Android hasn't been made yet, so wait a couple months and we'll have the Android version. And if you have more questions, you can find it in my book or ask questions to me or Francesco. So thank you so much for listening. It was a pleasure to be here. We have microphones. Yes, there you go. Right and left, white t-shirts. Hi.
Hello. I just wanted to clarify, for the second immersion peak that you just demonstrated a few times, is that a natural consequence of feeling a relief to the tension?
No, actually it increases tension. Yeah, it's a good question. So the question was, why is that immersion peak? It's really that building of tension where now I'm kind of sucked into this story and I want to see how that story resolves. So there's actually a little drop off at the very end if you looked at that. So it's really a structural issue. So I really want to build the emotion, but these data are always kind of a sine wave. Again, that lazy brain, you can't stay immersed at 100% all the time, not for more than about 20 or 25 seconds. So I've got to think about modulating that experience to have a little peak and valley, and then the call to action, if I can make that immersion peak, it's going to be more powerful. So we often see in ads is that story, immersion drops, and now I do buy my stuff. Too late, too little. So you can change that. If you can't edit that story, you can have the UNICEF logo on a car. You can have those branding moments wherever you see an immersion peak, and or edit it so that when there is the call to action, you've really got this high immersion that says, oh my gosh, neurologically, this is so valuable to me. Yeah, thanks for that great question. And please include Francesco in your questions as well. He has some great data. The legacy stuff's super important, I think. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. It's interesting, humor came up in the opening session. Chris Davenport spoke about humor, and now it's come up now. And obviously there was a big reaction from the audience when that advertisement played. But in my organization, and I think probably in others too, humor seems like too much of a risk. Like making a joke seems too risky. What if it falls flat? We offend someone. And also the opportunities to use humor are less obvious. So I don't know, this is really just an observation, I guess, more than a question, but I wondered if, if you've learned anything about that emotion through your research and how using humor, how nonprofits could use humor successfully.
It's a good question, I think, but one of the most successful, there is now even in the United States, but in UK it's called comic relief, which is substantially get the best comics in TV live, and then soon after there is the same comics go to visit an hospice or an hospital, and they show the tragic, definitely very, very poignant emotional story. So the two things works together because people are really immersed in the comic story, relaxed and joking. They're saying the same person that make you laugh, go into a reality, just say, well, I need your help to do that. So I think I understand that sometimes for certain causes especially is very delicate. But again, if it's the right target audience, if it's the right approach, could work, but not in isolation, of course. You need to have the call to action that is relevant to your cause, but it could work very well. So comic relief is an example. You can make something fun, and at the same time, while you're having fun, you also understand better there are problems and donate too.
And I think the humor works when you embed it in a story, right? So the little video I played, there's a story structure there. It wasn't just I had people flying off an amusement ride. That would be awful. But there was a story structure. There was these goofy teenagers, right? So it was contextualized. So if I just start out with a funny joke, they used to say that for public speaking, right? Start with a joke. No one does that. It's dumb because it's not in context. But if I build that story in, the nice thing about humor is there's always an unexpected twist. And from the brain perspective, the brain loves the unexpected. So in that video for Travelers Insurance, there was girl, cry, dad, watch with care. She does that 3 times, and maybe see the immersion falling. But now when we see the heightened emotion, and it's changed, now it's not girl crying, it's girl hugging dad, ooh, immersion goes up again, right? So you've got to contextualize this. So humor has that unexpected break in pattern, which is really nice.
Let's hear it for Frankie and Paul Zak. Francesco Ambrogetti. Thank you, brother. All right. Thank you so much.